At an elegant party, a mute little girl sat alone at a table, feeling lost among hundreds of wealthy guests. Overwhelmed by tension, she accidentally dropped the glass of water in her hand, splashing water across the pristine white tablecloth. She was immediately flooded with embarrassment as the judgmental gazes of everyone around her fell upon her. Just then, a young waitress appeared, kneeling down to clean up the mess for her. The waitress gently raised her hand and signed, "Don't worry, are you okay?" For the first time all evening, the little girl's face lit up with a radiant smile. They had no idea that what happened next would change their lives in a way no one could ever have imagined. Before we dive into the full story, tell me where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories of kindness every day. The Regency Crown Hotel in Manhattan had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting warm light across marble floors. The ballroom buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Men in tailored tuxedos and women in evening gowns glided past tables draped in ivory silk. This was the annual Carter Foundation Gala. 500 of New York's wealthiest had gathered to write checks, make connections, and be seen. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Emily Carter sat alone in the lounge area, a 12-year-old island in a sea of adults. She wore a navy blue dress with lace sleeves that itched. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun. In front of her sat a glass of water, its surface trembling from vibrations of footsteps and music she could hear perfectly well. She listened to the crowd. Voices rose and fell, laughter erupted in sharp bursts. Glasses clinked in toasts she couldn't participate in. To anyone looking, Emily appeared to be a well-dressed child waiting patiently. No one could see the loneliness pressing against her chest. A woman in a red gown swept past. The woman's companion said something that made her laugh, a bright tinkling sound. They didn't glance at Emily. Emily's fingers traced the condensation on her glass. She'd been to dozens of these events. They were always the same. Her father would bring her, introduce her to donors who would smile without really seeing her, and then she'd spend the evening exactly like this, alone. Invisible, she knew why she was here. Jonathan Carter, CEO of Carter Dynamics, needed to project the image of a family man. Emily was part of that image, like his tailored tuxedo or expensive watch. Across the room she could see him. Her father stood at the center of a circle of men, his posture confident, his smile easy, his voice carried across the space, deep and authoritative. He was in his element, closing deals. Building alliances. Jonathan Carter controlled everything in his world. Everything except how to talk to his own daughter. Emily looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly, not from cold but from familiar anxiety. The feeling of being surrounded by thousands of words she could hear but never respond to. She could listen to every conversation, understand every nuance, but her silence made her invisible. Her inability to speak made people uncomfortable, so they looked past her. She reached for her water glass, something to do with her hands. A burst of movement caught her eye. A group near her table suddenly stood. One man turned quickly, his elbow swinging wide. Emily jerked back. Her hand hit the glass. Water arced through the air, catching the light. It crashed across the tablecloth, spreading dark. Water cascaded over the edge onto Emily's dress, cold against her legs. Emily froze, her face burned. Around her, conversations paused. A woman nearby pulled back, expression tight with annoyance. A waiter stopped, eyes flicking to Emily and away. The man who'd caused her to jump didn't notice. No one moved to help. They stared, registered the disturbance, then deliberately looked away. Emily was a problem they didn't want. Helping meant getting involved, drawing attention. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked hard. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Her hands trembled as she dabbed at the water with her napkin. But it was useless. Water dripped onto the floor. Her dress clung to her legs. She wanted to disappear. Then someone moved. A woman in a black server's uniform appeared at Emily's side. She set down her tray and began soaking up the water with a clean towel. Her movements were practiced, professional, no judgment. Emily watched, surprised. The woman worked quickly, hands moving with confidence. She was probably in her late 20s, with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back. There was something different about her. Something kind. When most of the water was cleared, the woman straightened and looked directly at Emily. Then she did something that made Emily's breath catch. The woman's hands moved in slow, deliberate signs. "It's okay. Don't worry." Emily stared. American Sign Language. Someone here spoke her language. The woman smiled and handed Emily a fresh napkin. Then she signed again, more naturally. "Accidents happen. Are you all right?" Emily's hands moved before she could think. "You know sign language." "I do. My little sister can't speak like you. I've been signing since I was 10 years old." For the first time all evening, Emily felt the tightness in her chest ease. Here was someone who could actually talk to her. The woman glanced around, then crouched to Emily's eye level. "Big party. Must be overwhelming." Emily nodded, her hands moved hesitantly, then with growing confidence. "I hate these places, too many people talking and I can't join in. I just sit here and listen to conversations I'm not part of." "I can see you," the woman signed back. "And I'm Grace, by the way." Emily, for the first time in hours, Emily smiled. A real smile. Grace set a fresh glass of water on the table, placing it safely. "They're safe and sound." "Thank you," Emily signed. "For helping me. For talking to me." Of course, everyone deserves to be heard. Even if they speak with their hands. Grace started to gather wet towels, but Emily's hand shot out, hovering near Grace's arm. Grace paused. "Do you have to go right away?" Emily signed. Grace glanced toward the ballroom, then back at Emily. Something in the girl's expression made her decision. "I have a minute. What would you like to talk about?" Emily's face lit up. "Anything. What's your sister's name?" And for the next few precious minutes, Emily Carter finally had a conversation. Grace told her about Maya, who was 9 and obsessed with drawing. Emily shared her love of mystery novels. They talked about school, favorite foods, what it was like being unable to speak in a world that valued words. Grace never treated Emily like she was fragile. She signed with casual ease. She asked questions and listened. She made Emily laugh. Across the room, Jonathan Carter was deep in conversation with investors. He had no idea his daughter was experiencing something she'd been starved for. Someone who saw her as a complete person. Someone who made her feel less alone. A sharp voice cut through the moment. "Miller." Grace's head snapped up. Emily saw her expression change, warmth draining into professional neutrality. A man in a crisp black suit strode toward them, face tight with displeasure. His name tag read Thomas Daniels, event manager. Grace stood quickly. She gave Emily one last apologetic look before turning to face her supervisor. Mr. Daniels stopped, eyes sweeping the scene with disapproval. "What's going on here?" "There was a spill, sir," Grace said. "I was cleaning it up." "I can see that. What I can't see is why you're standing here chatting instead of returning to your station. We have 200 guests who need drinks served." "I was just making sure. I don't need explanations, Miller. I need you to do your job." He glanced at Emily, expression softening slightly. "Miss Carter, my apologies for the disturbance." Emily's hands moved in sign. She was helping me, but Mr. Daniels wasn't looking at her hands. He'd already turned back to Grace. Grace stepped forward. "Sir, if I could just explain, return to your station, now." Grace's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." She picked up her tray, and with one last glance at Emily walked away. Mr. Daniels turned back to Emily with a professional smile. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Carter?" Emily shook her head. He wouldn't understand anyway. "Very good." He bowed slightly and strode away. Emily sat back down, feeling loneliness crash over her. The brief connection had made everything else feel more isolating. She looked toward the ballroom, but Grace had disappeared into the crowd. The gala continued. Music played. People laughed. And Emily Carter sat alone with her fresh glass of water, invisible once more. But something had changed. For those few minutes, she'd felt seen. And now that she knew what that felt like, the loneliness hurt even more. An hour passed. Then another. Emily listened to her father's voice carry across the room as he worked the crowd. She knew this routine. He'd check on her eventually, she'd sign that she was okay, and he'd return to networking. He loved her, but he didn't know how to be with her. A waiter brought her a plate she hadn't asked for. She picked at it without appetite. Across the room, she caught a glimpse of Grace carrying champagne flutes. Their eyes met for just a second, and Grace gave her a small smile before moving on. She didn't know it then, but that small moment of kindness was about to change multiple lives in ways none of them could predict. Because someone else had been watching. 20 minutes later Grace returned. Emily was staring at her phone when a gentle tap on the table made her look up. Grace stood there with a fresh napkin and a conspiratorial smile. She glanced around, then signed. "Coast is clear, my supervisor is in the kitchen." Emily's face brightened. "You came back. I brought you this." Grace set down a small plate with chocolate cake. "I noticed you didn't eat much dinner." "How did you know?" Grace shrugged. "I've been watching the sad girl in the corner all night." Occupational hazard. "I'm not sad." Emily signed automatically, then paused. "Okay, maybe a little sad. More than a little, I think." Grace pulled out the chair beside Emily and sat. "This must be really boring for you." Emily looked around, listening to the constant hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, the laughter. Then she looked back at Grace. "Everyone here talks about money and business. And even though I can hear every word, I can't join in. I just sit here and listen to conversations I'm not part of. That sounds incredibly lonely." "It is." Emily's hands moved slowly. "My dad brings me to these things because it looks good. But he doesn't really know how to talk to me." "Not really." Grace's expression softened. "Does he know sign language?" "No. He's tried to learn a few times, but he's always too busy. He says we can communicate fine with me reading his lips and writing notes." Emily's hands trembled. "But I want to be able to talk with my hands. It feels more natural, and he never has time to read what I write anyway." "Your father sounds like he means well but doesn't quite get it." "Exactly." Emily felt relief at being understood. "He loves me. I know he does, but he doesn't see how hard this is. How alone I feel, even when I'm surrounded by people, especially when I'm surrounded by people." Grace nodded slowly. "My sister Maya says the same thing sometimes. She goes to a school with other kids who can't speak now, and it's been so much better. But before, when she was in a regular school, she always felt on the outside looking in. That's exactly what it's like." Emily's signs became animated. "Like there's this wall between me and everyone else. They can hear me if I try to speak, but my voice doesn't work right. I sound strange. So I stopped trying. And now people forget I'm even there. Except right now." "Except right now." Emily echoed, smiling. "This is the first real conversation I've had in weeks." Grace's eyebrows rose. "Weeks? My school has a sign language interpreter, but she just translates. She doesn't talk to me. None of the other kids know how to sign. They're nice enough, but..." Emily trailed off. "But it's not the same as actually communicating." Grace finished. "Yes." They sat in comfortable silence. Around them, the gala continued. But in their corner a real connection was forming. Grace glanced at her watch and sighed. "I should probably get back before Mr. Daniels has a heart attack. I wish you didn't have to go." Emily signed quickly. "This is the first time tonight I haven't felt completely miserable. I wish I could stay too." Grace's expression was regretful. "But I really need this job. My dad is sick, and the medical bills are..." She stopped, shaking her head. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about my problems. What's wrong with your dad?" Emily leaned forward. Grace hesitated, then signed slowly. "He has Parkinson's disease. It's getting worse. He needs medication, physical therapy, someone to help him during the day. My mom works 2 jobs, but it's still not enough. This catering gig pays better than most, so I can't risk losing it." "I'm sorry," Emily signed. "That must be really hard." "It is. But we manage." Grace smiled, but tiredness showed behind it. "Maya helps more than she should. She's only 9, but she's learned how to help Dad with his exercises, remind him to take his pills. She's tougher than I was at her age. She sounds amazing. She is. Grace's face lit up. You two would get along great. She's shy at first, but once she opens up she won't stop signing. She has a million questions about everything. I'd like to meet her sometime. Emily signed, then caught herself. Sorry, that was presumptuous. I know what you meant. Grace touched Emily's hand briefly. And I'd like that too. Maya would be thrilled to meet someone else who signs. A shadow fell across their table. Both looked up to find Mr. Daniels standing there. Expression thunderous. Miller, my office, now. Grace's face went pale. She stood quickly. Sir, I don't want to hear it. Not here. His voice was low but sharp. He glanced at Emily, noting the dessert plate. How casually Grace had been sitting. We'll discuss this in private. Emily's heart raced. She could see fear in Grace's eyes, read the tension in her supervisor's body language. She reached out and tugged on Mr. Daniels' sleeve. When he looked down, she signed frantically. She was helping me. I asked her to stay. Please don't be angry with her. Mr. Daniels stared at her hands without comprehension. Miss Carter, I'm sure whatever this is can wait. Right now I need to speak with my employee. Emily's hands moved again, more desperately. But Grace shook her head slightly. It's okay. Grace signed to Emily, though her hands trembled. Thank you for talking with me. It meant a lot. Before Emily could respond, Grace followed Mr. Daniels toward a door marked staff only. Emily watched them go, stomach churning. She looked around desperately for her father, finally spotting him across the ballroom, still in conversation. She could try to reach him, but by the time she got his attention, who knew what would happen to Grace? Emily pulled out her phone and typed, Dad, I need you, it's important. She hit send and waited. He didn't check his phone. She sent another message. Please Dad, now. Still nothing. He was too absorbed. Emily felt helpless. Grace had been kind to her, and now she was in trouble because of it. Because she'd taken a few minutes to make a lonely girl feel less alone. The injustice burned in Emily's chest. She wanted to scream, to make everyone stop and pay attention, but she had no voice they would hear. Her silence had never felt more suffocating. All she could do was sit and listen to the party continue. To the sounds of people enjoying themselves while someone who'd shown her kindness was being punished for it, and hope that somehow things would be okay. But deep down, as she listened to muffled voices behind that staff door, she knew they wouldn't be. The gala continued in full swing. Emily sat at her table, anxiously watching the staff corridor, where Grace had disappeared with Mr. Daniels 20 minutes ago. Her stomach churned with worry. She could hear the music playing, the constant hum of conversation around her, but all she could think about was Grace. Finally, she saw movement near the corridor entrance. Grace emerged, her face pale but composed, carrying her serving tray. She caught Emily's eye for just a moment and gave a small reassuring smile before heading toward the kitchen area. Emily exhaled in relief. Grace was okay. She still had her job, but Emily's relief was short-lived. Across the ballroom, Jonathan Carter had finally extracted himself from his business conversation. He'd seen Emily's messages on his phone, 17 of them, increasingly desperate. Guilt pricked at him as he made his way across the room toward his daughter. He was halfway there when he stopped. His daughter was sitting alone at her table, as expected. But standing beside the table, setting down a fresh glass of water, was a server. A young woman in the standard black uniform. And she wasn't just setting down the water and leaving. She was signing. Her hands were moving in what Jonathan recognized as sign language, something he'd tried and failed to learn multiple times. And his daughter was signing back. Her face lit up with a smile Jonathan hadn't seen in months. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. He changed direction, walking toward Emily's table with purpose. As he got closer he could see the server more clearly. She looked to be in her late 20s, pretty, with an easy smile. She set down a small plate with chocolate cake, something Emily definitely hadn't ordered, and signed something that made Emily laugh. Jonathan felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd seen this before. Staff members at high-end events trying to befriend wealthy guests, especially vulnerable ones. especially children. It was a classic tactic: gain the trust of the child, then leverage that relationship to get to the parents, to their money, to their connections. And this woman had clearly identified his daughter as an easy target, a lonely girl who couldn't speak, who would be grateful for any attention. It was calculated. It was predatory. It was unacceptable. Jonathan's jaw tightened as he approached the table. The server was so absorbed in her conversation with Emily that she didn't notice him until he was right there. "Excuse me," Jonathan said, his voice cold and sharp. Both Grace and Emily jumped. Grace turned, her smile fading as she saw the expression on Jonathan's face. "Sir, I can see exactly what you were doing." Jonathan's voice was low, but carried an edge of steel that made nearby guests glance over. "Step away from my daughter." Now, Grace's face went pale. She took a step back, her serving tray clutched in front of her like a shield. "Sir, I apologize if I—" "How long have you been doing this?" Jonathan demanded. "Befriending my daughter, bringing her treats, having these little conversations. This is the first time I've spoken with her tonight, sir. She spilled her water earlier and I helped clean it up, and I noticed she was using sign language, so you saw an opportunity." Jonathan's voice rose slightly, and more heads turned. "You saw a vulnerable child, who can't speak, who's sitting alone, and you decided to take advantage of that. To what? Get close to her, gain her trust. And then what was your plan? Ask her for my contact information. Try to leverage this friendship into some kind of benefit for yourself." Grace looked stunned. "No, sir, that's not. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it." Jonathan could hear his own voice getting louder, could see people openly staring now, but he didn't care. This woman had targeted his daughter. "I've seen this tactic before. Staff members who think they can befriend wealthy children and somehow improve their situation. It's manipulative. It's disgusting." Emily's hands flew into motion, signing frantically at her father, but Jonathan wasn't looking at her. His focus was entirely on Grace. "Sir, please, you have it all wrong," Grace said, her voice shaking. "Your daughter spilled her water and was upset. I was cleaning it up and I noticed she was signing. My sister can't speak either, so I know sign language, and I just wanted to help." "Help?" Jonathan's laugh was harsh. "You wanted to help yourself. How much were you planning to ask for, or were you going for the long con? Befriend my daughter, become indispensable to her, and then what? Suggest I hire you as her companion, her tutor, at what salary?" "That's not what I was doing." Grace's voice rose too, desperate now. "I was just being kind to a lonely girl." "Lonely?" Jonathan's expression darkened further. "So you're saying I neglect my daughter? That's your angle? Make me feel guilty so I'll—" Emily slammed her hand on the table, hard enough to make the water glass jump. The sharp sound cut through the ballroom chatter, and suddenly everyone nearby was watching. Jonathan turned to his daughter, irritation flashing across his face. "Emily, not now." But Emily was already signing, her hands moving fast and sharp, her face flushed with emotion. Jonathan stared at her hands, trying to catch even a single word, but she was moving too quickly. "Emily, slow down." "I can't." Emily grabbed her phone and started typing furiously, her fingers flying across the screen. "Emily, we can discuss this later," Jonathan said, his tone dismissive. "Right now I need to deal with." Emily shoved the phone in his face, forcing him to read. "She didn't do anything wrong. I spilled my water. She helped me. She was being kind. She's the only person all night who treated me like a human being." Jonathan pushed the phone away. "Emily, you're 12 years old. You don't understand how these things work. This woman was manipulating you." Emily's face crumpled. Tears started streaming down her cheeks as she signed again, desperately, her hands shaking. "I don't have time for this right now," Jonathan said, his voice hard. He turned back to Grace. "I want you away from my daughter, immediately, and I want to speak with your supervisor." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Carter." Mr. Daniels had appeared, drawn by the commotion. His face was tight with a mixture of concern and anger. "I apologize profusely for this situation. Miller, what is going on here?" "She's been targeting my daughter," Jonathan said before Grace could speak. "Befriending her, bringing her food, having extended conversations when she should be working. It's completely inappropriate." Mr. Daniels' expression darkened as he looked at Grace. "Miller, is this true? Have you been fraternizing with Mr. Carter's daughter?" "I was helping her clean up a spill," Grace said, her voice barely above a whisper now. "She was upset, and I noticed she was signing, so you decided to take an extended break to chat with one of our most important guest children." Mr. Daniels shook his head. "After our conversation earlier about boundaries, after I explicitly told you to return to your duties, but sir, what she needed was for you to do your job, clean up the spill, and move on," Mr. Daniels snapped. Then he turned to Jonathan, his tone shifting to obsequious professionalism. "Mr. Carter, I cannot apologize enough for this employee's behavior. I assure you this is not representative of the Regency Crown's standards. This staff member has been spoken to before about overstepping boundaries with guests." Jonathan nodded curtly. "I want her removed from this event, immediately." "Absolutely, sir. Miller, you're dismissed for the evening. Leave the floor immediately." Grace's hands were shaking as she clutched her tray. She looked at Emily, whose face was streaked with tears, signing desperately at her father, who still wasn't looking. "Please," Grace said quietly, looking at Jonathan. "Please just look at your daughter. She's trying to tell you." "I said leave." Jonathan's voice was cold as ice. "Before I call security." Emily stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. She grabbed Grace's arm and pulled her toward her father, signing with one hand while keeping Grace in place with the other. "Emily, let go of her," Jonathan said. Emily shook her head violently. She pulled out her phone again and typed with one hand. "She knows sign language. Her sister can't speak. She was helping me because I was lonely. She didn't want anything from you. She didn't even know who you were." Jonathan barely glanced at the screen. "Emily, you're making a scene. Sit down." "No." Emily's voice was raw, barely used, the sound surprising everyone including herself. It came out rough and unclear, but unmistakable. "No." Jonathan froze. Emily almost never used her voice. The sound of it cracked and desperate, cut through his anger for just a moment, but only for a moment. "Emily, sit down right now," he said firmly. "We'll discuss this at home." Emily looked at her father, at his hard expression, at his complete unwillingness to listen. Then she looked at Grace, who was crying silently, and at Mr. Daniels, who looked furious. She signed one more time, slowly, clearly. "You're making a mistake." But Jonathan wasn't watching her hands. He was already turning to Mr. Daniels. "I want to be clear that this isn't just about tonight. This employee showed predatory behavior toward my daughter. I think you should consider whether she should continue working at this establishment at all." Mr. Daniels' eyes widened slightly. Then he nodded. "I understand completely, Mr. Carter. Rest assured this will be handled appropriately." He turned to Grace, his voice low and harsh. "Miller, give me your tray, and leave the floor. Go to my office. Don't speak to anyone on your way there." Grace handed over the tray with numb fingers. She looked one last time at Emily, who was sobbing silently, desperately signing, I'm sorry," over and over. Grace signed back quickly. "Not your fault, never your fault." Then she turned and walked away, head held high, despite the tears streaming down her face. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her back, could hear the whispers starting. "Did you see that? What was that about? I heard she was harassing Carter's daughter, trying to take advantage of the poor girl." The whispers followed her all the way to the staff corridor. Behind her, Jonathan put his hand on Emily's shoulder. "Sit down, Emily. The speeches are about to start." Emily jerked away from his touch. She looked at her father with an expression he'd never seen before. Not just disappointment, not just hurt, disgust. She pulled out her phone and typed, "I want to go home, now. The gala isn't over, now." She typed it again in all capitals. "Or I will walk out of here by myself, and you can explain to all your important friends why your daughter is leaving alone." Jonathan looked around. People were still watching, whispering. This was already becoming a scene. If Emily left alone, it would be even worse. "Fine," he said curtly. "Get your coat." They left through the main entrance. Jonathan nodded to people as they passed, trying to maintain his composure, but Emily walked with her head down, tears still streaming. In Mr. Daniels' office, Grace sat in the same chair she'd occupied earlier, but this time,
She knew there would be no reprieve. Mr. Daniels entered and closed the door. He didn't sit down. He stood over her, his face flushed with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he hissed. "Jonathan Carter just accused you of predatory behavior toward his daughter. At my event, in front of half of New York's elite, I was just helping her."
"I don't care." Mr. Daniels slammed his hand on the desk. "Do you know who Jonathan Carter is? He could destroy this hotel with a single phone call. He could destroy me, and you gave him reason to. I didn't do anything wrong. You did everything wrong." Mr. Daniels pulled out a termination form, already half filled out. "I warned you earlier about boundaries. I told you to stay away from that girl. And what did you do? You went right back to her. You brought her food. You sat with her. You acted like you had any right to interact with a guest of that caliber. She was lonely. She couldn't speak and no one was talking to her. Not your concern." Mr. Daniels was shouting now. "Your concern is serving drinks and clearing tables. That's it. That's all it's ever been. But you couldn't help yourself, could you? You saw a rich man's daughter and you thought, here's my chance." That's not what happened. That's exactly what Jonathan Carter thinks happened. And his opinion is the only one that matters. Mr. Daniels signed the termination form with an angry flourish. "You're fired, Miller, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and inappropriate behavior toward a guest." Grace felt the words like a physical blow. Please don't do this. I have a family. My father is sick. My sister should have thought about that before you decided to cozy up to a billionaire's daughter." He shoved the form across the desk. "Take this to HR. They'll process your final payment. You have 10 minutes to collect your things and leave the building. If you're still here after that, I'll have security escort you out." Grace took the form with shaking hands. The words blurred in front of her eyes. "This will destroy me. If you put gross misconduct in my file, no one will hire me. That's not my problem. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences." "Please," Grace whispered. "Please just put position eliminated. Or something. Please don't ruin my whole life over this." Mr. Daniels looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You humiliated me in front of the most important client this hotel has. You made me look like I can't control my own staff. This goes in your file exactly as is termination for gross misconduct and inappropriate behavior toward guests. Now get out of my office." Grace stood on legs that felt like they might give out. She walked to the door then turned back. She was just lonely, Grace said quietly. She just wanted someone to talk to. That's all. And I helped her. That's all I did. "That's all you should have done," Mr. Daniels said coldly. "Helped her clean up her spill and walked away. Instead you chose to overstep. You chose to make yourself indispensable to a vulnerable child. And when her father caught you, you made excuses instead of apologizing. This is on you, Miller. All of it." Grace left the office and made her way to the staff room. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely open her locker. She could hear other servers whispering. Could feel their eyes on her. "Did you hear what happened? Carter accused her of trying to manipulate his daughter. She's being fired for harassment. I always thought she was too friendly with guests." Grace grabbed her bag and coat and walked out through the service exit without speaking to anyone. The cold night air hit her face. She stood in the alley behind the hotel, the termination form clutched in her hand, and finally let herself cry. Not just for the lost job, not just for the false accusations, but for Emily, that sweet lonely girl who'd just wanted someone to talk to. Who'd found that someone for a few brief moments, and who'd then watched helplessly as her own father destroyed the one person who'd been kind to her. Grace pulled out her phone and looked at it for a long moment, then she turned it off. There was no point in checking for messages. No one was going to call. No one was going to help. She'd tried to be kind, and it had cost her everything. Grace walked to the subway, her mind numb, her future destroyed. And back at the Carter apartment, Emily lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming into her pillow. Her father had knocked on her door twice. She hadn't answered. She never wanted to speak to him again. The one person who'd made her feel seen, who'd made her feel less alone, was gone. And it was her father who'd sent her away. 3 weeks later, Grace stood in the manager's office at the Regency Crown Hotel again. This time it was Linda Vasquez, the hotel's director of human resources, and her expression was sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Grace. I really am, but we have to let you go." Grace felt the words like a punch. "I don't understand," Mr. Carter said. "Mr. Carter isn't here," Linda interrupted gently. "And while his intervention was appreciated, it put us in a difficult position. Mr. Daniels is the son-in-law of the hotel's owner. When you were allowed to keep your position over his objection, it created significant friction. So you're firing me to make him happy. We're restructuring our catering staff due to budget constraints. Your position has been eliminated. It has nothing to do with the gala incident." "That's a lie, and we both know it." Linda looked uncomfortable. "Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks severance, and I won't put the gala incident in your employment record. Just that your position was eliminated for budgetary reasons. Will you put that in writing?" "Excuse me. I want it in writing that I'm being let go for budget reasons, not performance issues, because I know Mr. Daniels will tell his friends I was a problem employee." Linda sighed. "I can do that. It'll be ready by end of day." Grace walked out that afternoon, with a letter of recommendation that meant nothing and a severance check that would cover maybe 1 month's expenses. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. She applied everywhere. Most didn't call back. The few that did seemed interested until they checked references. Then the conversation would shift, become cooler. "I'm sorry, we've decided to go with another candidate. We're not hiring at this time after all." Grace knew what was happening. Mr. Daniels was making good on his threat. Being blacklisted was a death sentence. By the end of the second week her savings were gone. Rent was due in 3 days, and she was $800 short. Her father needed a prescription refill that cost $275. The electric bill was overdue. Grace sat at their kitchen table, staring at bills she couldn't pay. Across from her, Rosa wiped her eyes, trying to stay strong. "We'll figure something out," Rosa said. "I can ask for more hours at the diner." "Mom, you're already working 60 hours a week. You can't do more." "Then I'll get a third job. You need to sleep sometime." From the living room came the sound of the TV, turned up loud. Frank sat in his recliner, hands trembling. The Parkinson's was progressing. He needed physical therapy 3 times a week, but they'd already missed 2 sessions because they couldn't afford the copay. Grace had called Jonathan Carter's number twice. The first time, his assistant promised to pass along the message. The second time, the assistant said Mr. Carter was traveling internationally and unavailable. Grace left her number both times. He never called back. She didn't blame him. He was a billionaire with a company to run. The brief moment at the gala had probably already faded from his memory. "We could ask Aunt Maria for a loan," Rosa suggested. "She already loaned us $3,000 last year. We still haven't paid her back." "Then what, Grace? What do we do?" Grace had no answer. She could try retail, food service, anything, but those jobs paid minimum wage. It wouldn't be enough. Maya appeared in the doorway, signing, "What's wrong? Why is Mom crying?" "Nothing, sweetie." Grace signed back, forcing a smile. "We're just tired. Is it about money again?" Grace and Rosa exchanged a look. Maya was only 9, but she wasn't stupid. "We're managing," Rosa said, her hands moving in clumsy signs. Maya walked over and set down her piggy bank. "I have $43, you can have it." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Baby. No, that's your money. But you need it more than I do." Rosa pulled Maya into a hug, and Grace watched, feeling like a failure. This was her fault. She'd tried to be kind, and it had cost her everything. That night Grace lay awake, listening to Maya's soft breathing. Through the walls, she heard her mother crying quietly. Grace pulled out her phone and looked at Jonathan Carter's business card. She typed out a message asking for help, stared at it, then deleted it. She couldn't beg, and besides, he probably wouldn't even see it. 2 days later they got the eviction notice. 30 days to vacate. Grace read the letter 3 times. 30 days, where would they go? She thought about the Regency crown with its chandeliers and silk tablecloths. Thought about the people who'd spent thousands that night. Thought about how easy it would have been for any of them to help. But they hadn't seen. They never did. People like her were invisible to people like them. Jonathan Carter sat in his corner office, watching his daughter across his mahogany desk. Emily had barely signed, barely communicated in the 3 weeks since the gala. She attended school, did homework, ate dinner in silence. At first he'd assumed she was tired, then maybe coming down with something. But when her tutor mentioned Emily seemed depressed, Jonathan finally paid attention. "Talk to me," he said, signing clumsily. He'd been trying to learn, taking lessons twice a week, but he was still slow. "What's wrong?" Emily's hands moved listlessly. "Nothing." "That's not true. Your tutor says you barely participate anymore. You haven't touched your piano in weeks. That's not like you." "I don't feel like playing." Jonathan studied his daughter. She looked tired, older somehow. "Is this about the gala?" he asked. Emily's eyes met his. Pain flickered there. "Yes," she signed. "What about it?" "I thought we solved that problem. The woman who helped you kept her job. Her name is Grace." Emily's signs were sharp. "And no, you didn't solve the problem." Jonathan felt frustration. "I intervened when that manager tried to fire her. I made sure she could keep working." "And then what?" Emily stood, chair scraping. "Did you check? Did you make sure she was okay?" "I gave her my card. I told her to call if she needed anything." "Did she call?" Jonathan thought about it. "My assistant mentioned a couple calls." "Yes, but I was in Singapore for merger talks. I've been extremely busy." Emily's hands moved with fury. "Too busy to make one phone call. Too busy to check on someone you promised to help." "Emily, I don't understand why you're so upset. I did what I could." "You did the easy thing." Emily's signs were forceful. "You showed up, made a big speech, scared everyone, then left. You thought that was enough. But it wasn't." "What are you talking about?" Emily pulled out her phone, typed quickly and showed him the screen. A social media profile for Grace Miller. Jonathan recognized her. He scrolled through posts, stomach sinking. The most recent from 2 days ago was a photo of a handwritten sign, "Experienced server seeking work. References available, please contact Grace." Below someone had commented, "Aren't you the girl who got fired from the Regency Crown?" Grace replied, "I was let go for budget reasons, not performance. I have documentation." Another comment, "That's not what I heard." Jonathan felt something cold settle in his chest. "When was this posted?" Emily typed, "She's been looking for work for 3 weeks. No one will hire her. I found her profile because I wanted to see if she was okay." "She's not okay, Dad. She's desperate." "How do you know it's because of the gala?" Emily gave him a look of disbelief, then typed, "Raid the comments." Jonathan did. There were dozens, mostly from people in hospitality. The message was clear: Grace Miller was blacklisted. No one wanted to take the risk. "I didn't know," Jonathan said quietly. "Emily, I swear I didn't know." "You didn't check." Emily's signs were weighted with disappointment. "You thought you fixed everything, so you stopped paying attention. But you didn't fix anything. You just made it worse. That's not fair. I tried to help." "You tried to help yourself feel good." Emily's hands shook. "You wanted to be the hero who saved the poor server. But you didn't think about what would happen after. You never think about what happens after." The words hit Jonathan hard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You do it to me too." Emily's eyes were bright with tears. "You show up for big moments. You were there when I got my first communication device. You came to my piano recital. You bring me to your events so people see you with your daughter. But you're never really there. You don't know what my days are like. You don't know I eat lunch alone every day because no one can sign. You don't know I cry myself to sleep. Sometimes because I'm so lonely." Jonathan felt the floor dropping. "Emily, Grace saw me." Emily signed, tears streaming. "For 10 minutes at that party, someone actually saw me. Not your daughter, not the girl who can't speak, not a problem to solve. Just me. And it was the best 10 minutes I've had in months. And then she lost everything because of it, and you didn't even notice." She ran from his office before Jonathan could respond. He sat in silence, his daughter's words echoing. Then he picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Sarah, I need you to find someone. Grace Miller, she was a server at the Regency Crown. I need her current address and phone number." "Right away, sir. And clear my schedule for the rest of the week. Everything non-essential." "Sir, you have the board meeting Thursday." "I said clear it. My daughter needs me. Everything else can wait. 2 hours later, Jonathan stood outside a modest apartment building in Queens. Emily beside him. They'd barely spoken during the drive, but Emily had insisted on coming. The building was old but clean. Jonathan checked the address, then pressed the buzzer for apartment 3C. A woman's voice came through. Yes, Mrs. Miller. My name is Jonathan Carter. I'm looking for Grace. Long pause. What do you want? I need to speak with her. It's important. Another pause, then the door buzzed open. They climbed 2 flights to find a woman in her 50s waiting in the hallway. She had Grace's warm eyes, but they were hard with suspicion. Mrs. Miller. Jonathan held out his hand. She didn't take it. My daughter isn't here. She's out looking for work. Again. I know. That's why I'm here. 3 weeks too late. Your assistant said you'd call back. You never did. I was traveling and I didn't realize the urgency. That's my fault, and I'm sorry. Jonathan looked her in the eye. Can we come in? I need to understand what's happened. Rosa studied him, then glanced at Emily. Something softened. Fine. But wipe your feet, and don't wake my husband. The apartment was small but tidy. Jonathan noticed bills on the kitchen table, eviction notice on top. Rosa saw where he was looking and gathered them up. Sit, she said, gesturing to a couch. I'll make coffee. That's not necessary. I said I'll make coffee. While Rosa worked in the kitchen, Emily explored. She pointed to a drawing on the wall, 2 girls signing to each other. Emily smiled, for the first time in weeks. Rosa returned with coffee and sat across from them. So you want to know what happened to Grace? Yes. 2 days after your scene at the gala, they fired her anyway. Said it was budget cuts. That manager Daniels made sure word got around. Grace was trouble. Now no one will hire her. I had no idea, Jonathan said. Of course you didn't. People like you never do. Rosa's voice wasn't angry, just tired. You made your grand gesture, felt good, and moved on. But Grace lost everything. We got an eviction notice yesterday. In 3 weeks we'll be on the street. Jonathan felt sick. Where is Grace now? Queens Center Mall, handing out her resume. She's a college dropout with spotty employment history. Most places won't even look at her. Emily tugged Jonathan's sleeve, signing urgently. He watched, then turned to Rosa. My daughter wants me to tell you she's been thinking about Grace every day. She says Grace was the kindest person she'd met in a long time, and she's devastated this happened. Rosa's eyes softened looking at Emily. Grace talked about her, said meeting her reminded her of Maya. Maya is her sister? Jonathan asked. Yes, she's at school now, 9 years old and can't speak, like your Emily. Rosa's voice grew tender. Grace learned to sign for her. Spent every free moment studying so Maya would have someone to talk to. That's the kind of person your daughter met. Mr. Carter, someone who gives everything for the people she loves. Jonathan set down his cup. Mrs. Miller, I can't undo what happened. But I can try to make it right. We don't need your charity. It's not charity, it's justice. Jonathan leaned forward. Your daughter lost her job because she was kind to mine. That's not acceptable. Let me help fix this. How? I'm going to make calls. I'm going to make sure Grace's employment record is corrected, and anyone bad-mouthing her understands there will be consequences. Then I'm going to offer her a job. Rosa's eyes narrowed. Doing what? Being there for Emily. My daughter needs someone who can communicate in her own language. Someone who sees her as a person. Jonathan glanced at Emily. If Grace is willing, I'd like to hire her as Emily's companion and ASL mentor. Full-time position with benefits, health insurance, retirement, everything. That sounds like charity. It's not. Emily needs this. I need this. I'm a single father who doesn't know how to talk to his daughter. Jonathan's voice grew quiet. Grace can help bridge that gap, and maybe teach me to be a better father. Rosa was silent. Then you should ask Grace yourself. She'll be home in an hour. I'll wait. They sat in awkward silence. Emily explored quietly, stopping at family photos. Jonathan saw pictures of Grace at various ages, always with her arm around a younger girl. Maya. When the door opened,
Grace stood there in jeans and a coat, face drawn with exhaustion. She stopped short seeing Jonathan and Emily. "Mr. Carter," she said carefully, "this is a surprise. I owe you an apology," Jonathan said, standing. "And a lot more than that." Grace looked at her mother, who nodded. "Why don't we talk in the kitchen?" They sat at the small table, Emily hovering nearby. Grace wouldn't meet his eyes. "I didn't know they fired you," Jonathan began. "My assistant mentioned you called, but I was overseas and didn't realize it was urgent. That's my fault. I should have checked in after what happened." "It's not your responsibility," Grace said quietly. "Yes it is," I intervened. "I made promises, then I disappeared." He paused. "You lost your job because you were kind to my daughter, and I let you face the consequences alone. I'm sorry, Grace. Truly." Grace's hands were clasped tightly. "Okay. I want to make this right." "You can't." Grace's voice was flat. "I've been blacklisted. No one will hire me. In 3 weeks my family will be homeless. My father needs medication we can't afford. There's no making this right. Mr. Carter, some things can't be fixed with money or apologies." Emily stepped forward and tapped Grace's shoulder. When Grace looked, Emily signed. "I missed you." Grace's composure cracked. Her eyes filled. "I missed you too, sweetheart. Will you help me?" Emily signed. "My dad wants to hire you, to teach him sign language and talk with me. Please say yes. I've been so lonely." Grace looked from Emily to Jonathan, uncertain. "Mr. Carter, I appreciate the offer, but before you say no, let me be clear." Jonathan interrupted. "This is a full-time position. $60,000 a year to start. Full health insurance for you and your family. I'll cover your father's medical expenses directly, and I'll pay your back rent." Grace stared. "That's too much." "It's what the job is worth. Emily needs someone who can communicate fluently, who understands what it's like, navigating a world where you can't speak." Jonathan leaned forward. "And Emily needs a friend, someone who sees her. You did that at the gala." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Emily signed, hands pleading. "Please." Grace looked at Emily, then at her mother in the doorway with tears streaming. "My family comes first," Grace said slowly. "Always. If I take this job, I need to know I can still be there for them." "Of course," Jonathan said. "Your hours will be flexible. When Emily's at school, you can be with your family. I'm not asking you to choose. And this isn't charity. You're not just doing this because you feel guilty." "I do feel guilty," Jonathan admitted. "But that's not why I'm offering. I'm offering because my daughter needs you. Because I need help being the father she deserves. And because you lost something through no fault of your own. And I have power to help restore it." He met her eyes. "Will you let me?" Grace was quiet for so long. Jonathan thought she'd refuse. "Then can I think about it? This is a lot." "Of course, take all the time you need." Jonathan stood. "In the meantime, I'm making calls. Your eviction, your father's medical bills. Those can be handled immediately, regardless of your decision. Consider it an apology for my negligence. Mr. Carter." "Jonathan. Please, Jonathan. I can't let you just pay my debts." "You're right. It is too much. It's nowhere near enough to make up for what you lost. But it's what I can do right now, today." He glanced at Emily. "Let me do this, Grace. Please." Grace looked at her mother again. Rosa nodded. "Okay," Grace said finally. "Thank you." Jonathan made his calls right there. Within 20 minutes, he'd wired enough to cover the Miller family's back rent, utilities, and medical bills for 3 months. He'd also called the Regency Crown's owner, making very clear the blacklisting of Grace Miller needed to end. When he hung up, he found Emily and Grace signing to each other. Emily was smiling. Really smiling. Jonathan watched these two girls from different worlds, who'd found each other over spilled water. And he realized wealth was really for this, not empires or colleagues, but helping people, fixing injustices, making sure kindness was rewarded. "I'll take the job," Grace said suddenly. "If the offer still stands." "It does." "Then yes, I'll help Emily. And I'll help you learn to communicate with your daughter." She smiled. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for giving me a second chance, Jonathan replied. For giving us both one. Emily signed something quickly, and Grace laughed. She says she wants to introduce me to her piano teacher. Apparently she's been composing and wants my opinion. You compose? Jonathan asked, surprised. Emily nodded. I've been working on something for months, but I never showed you because you're always busy. Jonathan felt that stab of guilt. I want to hear it. When we get home, will you play for me? Emily's face lit up. Really? Really? And Grace, maybe you can help me understand what my daughter's trying to say when she plays. I can do that, Grace said softly. As they prepared to leave, Maya arrived home from school. She burst through the door, backpack trailing, and stopped seeing strangers. Emily waved shyly. Maya stared, then at her sister. Maya, this is Emily. Grace signed. She can't speak like you. I met her at a party. Maya's eyes went wide. Really? How old are you? 12. Emily signed. How old are you? 9. Do you go to a school for kids who can't speak? No, I have an interpreter. Does that make you feel lonely sometimes? Emily nodded. Yeah, it does. Me too. Maya signed. But I have Grace. She always knows what I'm saying. I'm lucky, Emily signed. Because now I have Grace too. Maya grinned and rushed to hug her sister. As Jonathan and Emily left an hour later, Emily slipped her hand into his. She rarely initiated contact. She signed with her free hand slowly. Thank you for fixing this. I'm sorry it took so long. He signed back. You tried today. That's what matters. They walked to the car in silence. But different silence. Not empty but full of possibility. Full of second chances. Jonathan had built a billion-dollar company through determination. But watching his daughter smile at him, he realized he'd been blind to what really mattered. He'd been given wealth and power not to accumulate more but to use them for good. To protect people who couldn't protect themselves. To make sure kindness wasn't punished. He'd forgotten that. But his daughter had reminded him. And he wouldn't forget again. But 2 days after Jonathan's visit, Grace received a phone call that shattered her fragile hope. Is this Grace Miller? The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Grace. Detective Marcus Chen from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I'm calling regarding your recent contact with Jonathan Carter. Grace's heart stopped. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Carter reported you contacted him, seeking financial assistance after losing employment at the Regency Crown Hotel. We're investigating whether there was any attempt at extortion or extortion. Grace's voice rose. I never asked him for money. He came to me. Mime, I need you to calm down. We're just gathering information. I need you to come to our office tomorrow at 9 a.m. to give a statement. Grace's hands shook. I didn't do anything wrong. Then you have nothing to worry about. 9 a.m. Miss Miller. Don't be late. The call disconnected. Grace stood in her kitchen feeling like the floor had dropped out. An investigation. Extortion. Her mother appeared. Who was that? The district attorney's office. They think I tried to extort money from Jonathan Carter. Rose's face went pale. That's insane. He came here. He offered. I know, but someone filed a complaint. Grace's mind raced. Mr. Daniels. It has to be him. She called Jonathan's number immediately. It rang 4 times. Then voicemail. She called again. On the 5th try his assistant answered. Carter Dynamics. Mr. Carter's office. This is Grace Miller. I need to speak with Jonathan right now. It's an emergency. I'm sorry, Miss Miller, but Mr. Carter is in meetings all day. I can take a message. No, you don't understand. The DA's office called me. They're investigating me for extortion. I need to talk to Jonathan now. Pause. I'll see what I can do. Grace waited 45 minutes. When the phone rang, it wasn't Jonathan. It was his lawyer. Miss Miller, my name is Richard Strauss. I'm Mr. Carter's attorney. He's asked me to handle this. I need to talk to him directly. That's not possible. Mr. Carter is concerned direct communication might compromise the investigation. What investigation? I didn't do anything wrong. I understand you're upset, but listen carefully. Someone filed a complaint alleging you approached Mr. Carter seeking money in exchange for not speaking to media about an incident at a charity gala. The DA takes these allegations seriously. Grace felt sick. That's a complete lie. Jonathan came to my apartment. He offered to help. I never asked for anything. Do you have evidence? Text messages, emails, witnesses? My mother was there. And his daughter. Family testimony isn't always reliable. And Mr. Carter's daughter is a minor. Strauss sighed. Look, I believe you. But the DA has a sworn statement from Thomas Daniels claiming he witnessed you threatening Mr. Carter's reputation at the gala, unless he provided financial compensation. That's insane. I never even spoke to Mr. Carter at the gala, except for 30 seconds. Unfortunately, Mr. Daniels is a respected business owner with no apparent motive to lie. You're a recently terminated employee with financial difficulties. The optics aren't good. Grace wanted to scream. So what happens now? You give your statement tomorrow. Answer honestly. Don't volunteer information. I'll be there to represent you. You're representing me, Mr. Carter insisted. He doesn't believe the allegations, but he has to be careful about appearances. He can't be seen interfering with an investigation. Can I at least talk to him? Please. Not until this is resolved. I'm sorry, Miss Miller. The best thing you can do is cooperate fully and tell the truth. The next morning, Grace sat in a small room at the DA's office with Richard Strauss beside her. Across from them sat Detective Chen and ADA Sarah Kim. Let's start from the beginning, Chen said. How did you first meet Jonathan Carter? Grace explained the gala, the spilled water, her conversation with Emily. She described Mr. Daniels firing her and Jonathan intervening. She told them about unemployment and Jonathan's unexpected visit. And at no point did you request money? ADA Kim asked.
No, never. Did you mention your financial difficulties? Yes, but only after he asked why I'd lost my job. I was explaining consequences of the gala. Some might interpret that as a subtle request for assistance. It wasn't. I was answering his question. Chen slid paper across the table. This is Mr. Daniels' statement. He claims he overheard you telling Mr. Carter you had connections with media outlets interested in a story about wealthy men taking advantage of vulnerable service workers. Grace stared in disbelief. That's fabrication. I never said anything remotely like that. Mr. Daniels has been in hospitality for 20 years. No criminal record, no history of false statements. Why would he lie? Because I embarrassed him in front of his boss. Because Jonathan Carter threatened him and he lost face. This is revenge. That's quite an accusation, Kim said coolly. Strauss put a hand on Grace's arm. My client has no criminal record either. She's a caregiver for her disabled father and nonverbal sister. The idea she would attempt extortion is absurd. Unless she was desperate, Chen suggested. Facing eviction, unable to find work, medical bills piling up. That pressure makes people do things they wouldn't normally consider. I didn't do this, Grace said, voice shaking. I helped a lonely little girl. That's all I did. And I've been punished ever since. The interview lasted 3 hours. By the end, Grace felt wrung out. We'll be in touch, Kim said. Don't leave the city, Miss Miller. Outside, Grace turned to Strauss. What happens now? They'll investigate. Interview witnesses, check phone records, review hotel security footage if it exists. If they don't find evidence supporting Daniels' claim, they'll drop it. And if they do find evidence he made up. Strauss looked uncomfortable. Let's not think about that yet. But Grace couldn't stop thinking. She'd been blacklisted. She was under investigation. And the man who'd promised to help had disappeared behind lawyers. When she got home, her mother was waiting with red eyes. They came here, Rosa said. The police. They took your laptop, phone records. They questioned your father even though he could barely understand. Mom, I'm so sorry. This is that hotel manager, isn't it? He's doing this because we dared to stand up. Grace nodded, too tired to speak. Maya appeared, signing. Did you go to jail? No, baby. I just had to answer questions. Are you in trouble? Grace wanted to lie to protect her sister, but Maya deserved truth. Some people are saying I did something wrong, but I didn't, and the truth will come out. Promise. Grace pulled her into a hug. Promise. But even as she signed it, Grace wasn't sure she believed it. She'd learned truth didn't always matter. What mattered was who had power and who didn't. And right now all the power was on the other side. 3 days later, Grace got another call, this time from Emily. The phone rang at midnight. Grace answered despite not recognizing the number. "Hello, Grace." The voice was young, scared, transmitted through text-to-speech. "It's Emily. Emily, how did you get this number? It's midnight. I know, I'm sorry, but I had to call. I heard my dad talking to his lawyer. They're going to settle." Grace sat up. "Settle what?" "The investigation. His lawyer says the easiest way to make it go away is for Dad to say he doesn't want to press charges and it was all a misunderstanding. But that means you'll still have this on your record. People will think you tried to extort him." "Emily, where's your father? Can I talk to him?" "He's not home. He's in California for business." "But Grace, this isn't fair. You didn't do anything wrong." "I know, sweetheart. But sometimes fair doesn't matter. It should matter." Emily's robotic voice broke with emotion. "You helped me. You were kind. And now you're being punished and my dad is just going to let it happen because it's easier." Grace felt tears sting. "It's okay, Emily. It's not okay. Nothing about this is okay." The artificial voice couldn't convey crying, but Grace heard the rawness. "I've been trying to tell him, trying to make him understand, but he just keeps saying the lawyers will handle it. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get this is destroying your life." "Emily, listen to me. None of this is your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix. But I'm the reason it happened." "No, you're the reason something good happened at that gala. You're the reason I had a few minutes of feeling like what I did mattered. Don't take that away by blaming yourself." Emily was quiet. Grace heard background sounds through the phone. "I miss you. I miss you too. Will I ever see you again?" Grace didn't know how to answer. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." After Emily hung up, Grace lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She thought about Jonathan Carter with his billions and power and good intentions. He'd meant to help, but meaning to help and actually helping were different things. He'd swooped in like a hero, made grand gestures, thrown money at the problem. And when it got complicated, when it required sustained attention and personal cost, he'd retreated behind lawyers and what was easiest, because that's what people with power did. They helped when convenient, when it made them feel good, but when helping got hard or risky, they protected themselves first. Grace had been foolish to hope for anything different. The next morning she received an official letter from the DA's office. The investigation was being dropped due to insufficient evidence, and Mr. Carter's unwillingness to pursue charges. No arrest, no trial, but the letter noted the complaint would remain in public record. Anyone who searched her name would find it. Any employer doing a background check would see she'd been investigated for extortion. Even if charges were dropped, her name was permanently tainted. That afternoon, Grace deleted Jonathan Carter's number. She deleted the business card from her wallet. She tried to delete the memory of Emily's hopeful face. She couldn't delete that, but she could stop expecting anything from people who lived in a different world, and she could keep surviving day by day the only way she knew how. Grace sat in quiet, listening to her family moving through the apartment, her father's shuffling footsteps, her mother's tired sighs, Maya's silent presence. She had tried to be kind, and kindness had destroyed her. But somehow she would have to find a way to keep going, even if she had to do it alone. Jonathan Carter sat in his daughter's room watching her pack. Emily was methodical, carefully folding each item before placing it in her suitcase. She hadn't looked at him once in 10 minutes. "Emily," he said, signing awkwardly. "Talk to me." She didn't respond, just continued packing. "Please." Emily finally turned. The look in her eyes made Jonathan's chest tighten. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. Deep, profound disappointment. Her hands moved slowly, deliberately. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to understand why I handled the situation the way I did." "You mean why you abandoned Grace?" Her signs were sharp, cutting. "I didn't abandon her. I protected her from a criminal investigation that could have destroyed her life. By letting everyone think she tried to extort you. That's protection." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair. "It's more complicated than that, Emily. The DA had a sworn statement from a credible witness. If we'd fought it, if I'd testified on Grace's behalf, it would have looked like I was using my influence to protect someone I had a personal relationship with. The investigation would have dragged on for months. Grace's name would have been in the papers every day. So instead you let her name be ruined quietly. How generous of you. That's not fair. Emily's hands moved with controlled fury. You know what's not fair. Grace lost her job because she was kind to me. Then she lost her reputation because you got involved. And now she's lost any chance of clearing her name because you decided it was easier to walk away. I sent her money. I made sure her family's bills were paid. She doesn't want your money, Dad. She wants her life back. She wants to be able to get a job without people thinking she's a criminal. Emily's signs became more emphatic. Money doesn't fix everything. Sometimes it just makes you feel better about not actually fixing the problem. The words hit Jonathan hard. What would you have me do? The investigation is closed. The DA accepted my statement that it was all a misunderstanding. That's the best outcome we could hope for. The best outcome for who? For you, because it's definitely not the best outcome for Grace. Jonathan sat on Emily's bed. I'm trying to do right by her, Emily. I'm trying to protect both of you. Then try harder. Emily sat beside him, expression softening slightly. Dad, I know you mean well. I know you think you're helping, but you keep treating this like a business problem with a business solution. It's not. It's about people. About Grace and her family and their whole future. I know that. Then act like it. Go to her. Talk to her. Find out what she actually needs, not what you think she needs. Emily's hands moved more gently. And maybe start by listening instead of trying to fix everything with money and lawyers. Jonathan looked at his daughter, this 12-year-old who somehow understood things he'd spent a lifetime missing. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just never listened long enough to notice. He pulled her into a hug. For once she didn't pull away. I'll talk to Grace, he said. Tomorrow, I'll go to her apartment and we'll figure this out together. Promise, promise. But when Jonathan arrived at the Miller apartment the next morning, Grace wouldn't let him in. He stood in the hallway speaking through the door. Grace, please, I need to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. Her voice was muffled but firm. I made mistakes. I know that. Let me try to make it right. You can't make it right, Mr. Carter. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Some things are too broken to fix. Grace. The door opened a crack. Grace stood there in sweatpants and old t-shirt, hair pulled back, face bare. She looked tired, defeated. What do you want from me? She asked. I want to help. You've helped enough. The bitterness was cutting. I lost my job because of your help. I got investigated by the DA because of your help. My name is permanently associated with an extortion attempt because of your help. So please, Mr. Carter, stop helping. Jonathan flinched. The investigation was dropped. You're not facing any charges. Do you know what comes up when someone Googles my name now? Grace Miller investigation extortion billionaire. That's what potential employers see. That's what everyone sees. She laughed, harsh and humorless. I applied for a job at a grocery store yesterday. They turned me down. A grocery store, Mr. Carter. I can't even get hired to stock shelves because your help has made me radioactive. I'll make a statement. I'll tell everyone you're innocent. You already did that, and people still think I tried to extort you because that's what they want to think. It's easier to believe the poor server tried to take advantage of the rich man than to admit the system punished someone for being kind. Jonathan felt the truth settle over him. What can I do? Tell me and I'll do it. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then you want to help, really help? Yes. Then use your power for something that matters. Not just for me but for everyone like me. All the servers and housekeepers and caretakers who get crushed by people like Mr. Daniels. Start a foundation or legal fund that protects workers when they're wrongfully terminated. Make it so the next person who gets fired for being kind has somewhere to turn. I can do that. And leave me alone. I can't be your project, Mr. Carter. I can't be the person you save to feel better about yourself. I need to rebuild my life without you. Emily misses you. Grace's composure cracked. Just for a moment. I miss her too, but that doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Emily hasn't smiled in weeks. She barely eats. She's packing to go stay with my sister because she can't stand being around me right now. Jonathan's voice broke. You were the first person who made her feel seen, who made her feel like she mattered. Don't you see how important that is? I do see it. That's why this is so hard.
Grace's eyes filled with tears. But I can't be what Emily needs right now. I'm barely holding my own family together. I can't take on someone else's. What if I made it easier? What if I really committed this time? Not just money but actual support. Consistent support. How? You're a billionaire CEO. You travel the world. You have a company to run. You can't be here for the daily stuff, the homework help and hard conversations, and times when Emily just needs someone to sit with her in silence. Grace shook her head. And I'm a woman with a disabled father and 9-year-old sister and no job. I can't be Emily's savior. I can barely be my own family's. Then let me help your family, Jonathan said. Really help, not just throwing money at bills. Let me set up a trust for your father's medical care. Let me ensure Maya has everything she needs for school. Let me take those burdens off your shoulders so you can breathe. And what do I give you in return? Nothing. This isn't a transaction. Grace laughed, that same bitter sound. Everything is a transaction with people like you. You just pretend it isn't. Jonathan felt anger flare. That's not fair. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been to protect me from the beginning. To make sure Mr. Daniels couldn't touch me. To use your power when it mattered. Not after everything had already fallen apart. Grace's voice rose. You can't fix this with money or grand gestures. You can't undo the investigation or the lost job or the ruined reputation. So stop trying to make yourself feel better by throwing resources at me. Is that really what you think I'm doing? Isn't it? They stared at each other across the threshold. Two people from completely different worlds, unable to find common ground. Finally Jonathan said quietly, I'm sorry, for all of it. For not being there when you needed me, for not understanding the consequences of my actions, for thinking I could fix everything. He pulled out an envelope and set it on the floor. This is a letter for any employer who wants a reference. It states clearly that you worked for my family, that you were excellent at your job, and that I would hire you again without hesitation. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, but it's something. Grace looked at the envelope but didn't pick it up. Jonathan turned to leave, then paused. Emily's leaving for Boston tomorrow. She's going to stay with my sister for a while. Maybe a long while, because she can't stand to be around the father who failed her. He looked back at Grace. She asked me to tell you something. She said thank you for seeing me, even if it was just for a little while. It meant everything. He walked away before Grace could respond. Grace stood in her doorway staring at the envelope. Behind her she heard her mother's footsteps. Was that him? Rosa asked. Yes. What did he want? To help. To fix things. Grace finally bent down and picked up the envelope. To make himself feel better about failing. Do you really think that's all it is? Grace opened the envelope and read the letter. It was beautifully written, personal and specific about her time with Emily. It praised her compassion, communication skills, professionalism. It included Jonathan's direct contact information. It was exactly what she needed, and it was nowhere near enough. I don't know what to think anymore, Mom. I just know I'm tired. Tired of hoping things will get better. Tired of believing in people who let me down. Rosa put an arm around her daughter. Then stop hoping for a while. Just focus on today, on what's in front of you. The rest will work itself out. But as Grace looked at the letter, she knew the rest wouldn't just work itself out. Life didn't work that way. Not for people like her. The powerful made mistakes and moved on. The powerless lived with consequences forever. That was just the way the world worked. 2 weeks later, Grace stood outside Lexington Avenue Elementary School, waiting for Maya's dismissal. She'd spent the morning at 3 job interviews, all nowhere. The letter from Jonathan Carter sat in her bag, unread by any interviewer. They'd Googled her name before she'd even had a chance. The bell rang and children streamed out. Grace spotted Maya immediately, purple backpack bouncing. But Maya wasn't running toward Grace. She was running toward a black town car parked at the curb. Grace's heart stopped as the door opened and Emily Carter stepped out. The two girls collided in a hug, signing frantically. Grace couldn't see what they were saying, but Maya's face was lit with joy. Then Jonathan Carter emerged from the driver's side. He spotted Grace and walked over, hands up peacefully. Before you say anything, this wasn't my idea. Well, not entirely. What are you doing here? Emily wanted to see Maya. They've been texting. Maya gave her her number that day at your apartment. He glanced at the girls. I thought maybe we could all talk. Somewhere neutral. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. I don't think that's a good idea. Please Grace, just coffee, 1 conversation. If you still want us to leave you alone after that we will. You have my word. Grace looked at Maya's happy face, at how animated Emily had become. Fine, 1 conversation. The coffee shop was small and warm, smelling of fresh bread. Jonathan ordered drinks while the girls claimed a corner table, hands flying as they caught up. Grace sat across from Jonathan, hands wrapped around tea she hadn't asked for. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Jonathan began, about power and responsibility and what it means to actually help people instead of just feeling like you're helping. Okay, I realized something. Every time I've tried to help you, I've approached it like a business problem. Identify the issue, throw resources at it, move on. But people aren't business problems, and real change doesn't happen through grand gestures. It happens through showing up, consistently, even when it's hard. Grace said nothing, just waited. So I'm not here to offer you money or a job, or to make any more big promises. I'm here to ask what you actually need, not what I think you need, what you need. He leaned forward, and I'm here to listen, really listen, without trying to fix everything immediately. Grace studied his face, looking for insincerity, but he seemed genuine, tired, humbled, but genuine. I need a job, she said finally. A real job I can put on my resume, something that doesn't make me dependent on your charity. Okay. I need the investigation record scrubbed from public searches. I don't care if it's technically public record. I need it buried so deep the average employer won't find it. I can make that happen, and I need you to understand I can't be Emily's emotional support system. I have my own family to take care of. I can't be responsible for your daughter's happiness. Jonathan nodded slowly. I understand. But what if it's not about responsibility? What if it's just about friendship? Maya and Emily clearly care about each other. They should be allowed to have that relationship, don't you think? Grace glanced at the girls. Maya was showing Emily something on her phone, both giggling soundlessly. Yes, she admitted. They should. And maybe sometimes you and Emily could spend time together too. Not as an employee or caretaker, but as an adult who understands what she's going through. Someone who sees her as a person. Jonathan's voice was quiet. I can't give her that, but you can. What about you? Where do you fit in all this? I'm learning sign language, actually learning it this time, with a tutor 4 times a week. I'm not good yet, but I'm trying. He showed her his hand, small notes written in pen. Study reminders. I'm 42 and feel like I'm back in middle school, but I'm doing it. Despite herself, Grace felt something soften. That's good. Emily needs that. She needs a lot of things I've failed to give her. I'm trying to do better. He pulled out a folder. This is a contract for a part-time position at Carter Dynamics. Not as Emily's caretaker, but as a consultant for our corporate accessibility program. We're launching an initiative to make all our facilities and products more accessible to people with disabilities. You'd work with our design teams, test our products, provide feedback from the perspective of someone who lives with and cares for people with disabilities. Grace opened the folder. The salary was reasonable, not inflated. Hours were flexible. Job description was detailed and professional. Ita's, Waitress was detailed and professional. This is real work, she said. Surprised. Yes, work you're qualified for and we actually need done. It's not charity, it's a legitimate position. Jonathan pointed to a clause. And it includes full benefits for your whole family, including coverage for your father's Parkinson's care and Maya's educational needs. Why are you doing this? Because Emily was right. I can't fix the past, but I can change the future. Not just for you but for other people in your situation. He pulled out another document. This is the charter for the Carter Workers' Rights Foundation. It provides legal representation and financial support for service industry workers who face wrongful termination or retaliation. I hired 3 employment lawyers full-time. They start next month. Grace stared at the documents. You actually did it. You told me to use my power for something that matters. So I am. Jonathan met her eyes. but none of it means anything if I can't make things right with the person who inspired it. So I'm asking Grace, will you give me another chance? Not as a charity case or project, but as someone I wronged and want to make amends to. Before Grace could answer, Maya ran over, signing excitedly, Grace, Emily invited me to her house next Saturday. Can I go, please? Emily appeared behind her looking nervous, her hands moved slowly. Only if it's okay with you. I know we're not friends anymore, but Maya and I talk all the time, and she really wants to see my piano and we're not friends? Grace interrupted, signing back. Who said that? Emily looked uncertain. I thought, after everything, Emily, what happened wasn't your fault, and it doesn't change the fact that I care about you. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. I've been angry and hurt and scared, but never at you. Emily's face crumpled and she rushed forward, hugging Grace tightly. Maya joined in, and suddenly Grace was surrounded by two young girls who'd somehow become important despite all the chaos. When they pulled apart, Grace looked at Jonathan. I need to think about the job offer. It's not something I can decide right now. Of course, take all the time you need. But Maya can visit Emily on Saturday, and maybe I can come too, just to make sure Maya's okay in a new place. Jonathan's face lit up. We'd like that. Emily and I both. They finished their coffee in more comfortable silence. The girls returned to their corner, and Grace found herself actually relaxing. Can I ask you something? Jonathan said. Okay, how do you do it? Stay kind, stay compassionate, after everything you've been through. Most people would have become bitter. Grace thought about it. I have been bitter. I still am sometimes, but Maya needs me to be more than my worst feelings. My father needs me to keep going. And maybe somewhere deep down, I still believe being kind matters. Even when kindness gets punished, it shouldn't be punished. That's what I'm trying to change. One foundation won't change a whole system. No, but it's a start. Jonathan looked at his daughter teaching Maya a hand game. And maybe if enough people with power actually use it to protect the powerless instead of just talking about it, things will slowly get better. That's optimistic. I'm trying to be. For Emily's sake, if nothing else. He stood. We should get going. But Grace, thank you for giving me this chance to listen, to do better. Grace stood too. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I promise. As they walked back to the cars, Emily slipped her hand into Grace's. On her other side, Maya did the same. Grace looked down at the two girls, so different yet so similar in their need to be seen and understood. Maybe, she thought, this could work. Maybe Jonathan Carter really would do better this time. Maybe the system that had crushed her could be changed, slowly, by people willing to use their power for good. Or maybe it was all just another beautiful promise that would crumble. But as Emily squeezed her hand and signed, I missed you so much, Grace decided she was willing to find out. Because in the end, kindness was a choice you made every day. Even when it was hard, even when it hurt, especially then.
3 months later, Grace reviewed prototypes for a new hearing aid integration system at Carter Dynamics. She'd been on the job 6 weeks and had already made significant contributions. Her co-workers respected her expertise. Her paycheck covered her family's needs with room to spare. The investigation record had been buried. Most employers never looked that hard. Her father had a new doctor and treatment plan that was helping. Maya was thriving at school, confident from having a friend like Emily, and Emily herself was transformed. She smiled more, laughed more. She'd started composing again, creating beautiful pieces Grace got to hear every Saturday when they gathered for dinner. Jonathan was learning sign language diligently, and while still clumsy, Emily's face lit up every time he successfully signed a full sentence. He'd also learned to listen, really listen. When Emily talked about her day, they were all healing, slowly but surely. That evening, Jonathan knocked on her office door. Got a minute? He signed, gestures still stiff but recognizable. Sure, she signed back. He sat across from her desk. I wanted to tell you something. The foundation processed its first case last week. A housekeeper fired for taking a day off to care for her sick child. We got her job back with back pay and an apology. That's wonderful. It is, and it wouldn't have happened without you. Without what you went through and your willingness to push me to do better. Jonathan signed slowly, focusing. You taught me what it means to actually see people, to honor their dignity, not just their usefulness to me. Grace felt her throat tighten. You're doing the work, that's what matters. We're doing it. Together. He stood. Emily wants to know if you and Maya can come for dinner tomorrow instead of Saturday. She's performing a new composition and wants you to hear it first. We'll be there. After Jonathan left, Grace sat alone looking at the family photo on her desk. Her parents, Maya and herself at Maya's birthday. All smiling, genuinely happy. She pulled out her phone and texted her mother, working late tonight but bringing home Thai food. The good stuff. Her mother texted back. Your father had a good day. Walked around the block twice. Maya got an A on her English paper. We're celebrating. Grace smiled. They were celebrating. Not just surviving but celebrating good moments. She thought about that night at the gala, when she'd knelt to help a lonely girl with spilled water. Such a small gesture, such enormous consequences. But here on the other side of all the pain and fear and struggle, something beautiful had emerged. Not a fairy tale ending, but something real, something earned. A family that had been falling apart was now stable. A girl who'd felt invisible now felt seen. A man who'd used his power carelessly had learned to wield it with purpose, and Grace herself had found not just a job but purpose. She couldn't fix the whole broken system, but she could help fix small parts, one case at a time, and maybe all those small fixes would add up to real change. As Grace drove home that night, past the glittering skyscrapers where wealth and power concentrated, she thought about the invisible people who made those buildings run. The cleaners and guards and servers and caretakers who kept everything functioning while remaining unseen. She thought about how easy it was to overlook someone. How easy to forget that every person had a story, a family, a life that mattered. And she thought about how a single act of kindness, even when it led to pain, could ultimately lead to something better. Not because kindness always led to reward, it didn't, but because kindness created connections. And connections created communities, and communities created change. One person at a time, one small gesture at a time, one spilled glass of water at a time. When Grace arrived home, Maya was at the door, hands flying excitedly. Emily texted, she finished her composition. She says it's about finding your voice even when you can't speak. Grace hugged her sister tight. Then we better make sure we're there tomorrow to hear it. Can we bring Dad? He's been having good days. We can ask him. They went inside together, into the apartment no longer haunted by eviction notices and unpaid bills, into a home where a disabled father could get care, where a non-verbal 9-year-old could dream big dreams, where a young woman who'd been crushed had found a way to stand back up. It wasn't a mansion, it wasn't luxury, but it was theirs, and it was enough. Later that night, Grace stood by the window looking out at city lights. Her phone buzzed. Thank you for giving my dad a second chance, and for giving me a friend. See you tomorrow, Grace typed back. See you tomorrow, can't wait to hear what you've created. She set down her phone and thought about second chances. How rare they were, how precious. Jonathan Carter had been given a second chance to be a better father. Grace had been given a second chance to build a stable life. Emily had been given a second chance to feel less alone. Not everyone got second chances. The system was still broken. The powerful still had more advantages. Injustice still flourished. But here, in this small corner of that vast world, a few people had found their way to something better, and maybe that was enough to keep hoping. Enough to keep trying. Enough to keep believing that kindness, despite its costs, was still worth choosing. Every single day, even when it hurt. Especially then, because in the end what defined a family wasn't blood or money or proximity, it was the choice to see each other, to show up, to care, even when caring was difficult. Grace had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd learned it, and she'd never forget it again.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.